Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Thursday, November 18th, 2021. I'm Andrew Hanson, ready to break down this 6-game NBA DFS slate for you. And here we are a week before Thanksgiving on this Thursday. So why don't we just go ahead and feast on some NBA DFS tonight, get ourselves ready for Thanksgiving. No reason to wait. Let's do it now. Coming off a solid night in NBA last night, Coach put out some good winners on DraftKings and Yahoo. That's where the money was made. And we're going to get after it again here and go for DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. And interesting slate here. We've got the 6 games, 8 of the 12 teams involved in a back-to-back. And then looking at the totals here, 2 totals over 220, which has actually become closer to the magic number this year. Last year was over 230, but we're just not seeing totals in those ranges so far this year. So 220 is solid. And then we do have 3 games under 210. So that's something to keep in mind. And we have some really strong offenses here. 1, 2, and 3 in terms of offensive efficiency. We've got some fast teams on this slate, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in pace. So we're going to zero in on those teams, those better games, and we do have some key injury news that we'll get to as we go through the slate. So let's kick it off with Golden State and Cleveland, 7:30 p.m. Eastern start to the slate tonight. Golden State favored by 8.5. This is one of those lower totals of 207.5 because we've got the slow Cleveland team that's not good offensively. They are decent defensively. They're 10th. Meanwhile, Golden State is just crushing it. Best offense in the league, best defense in the league, and they're 3rd in pace. This is a front end of a back-to-back for Golden State. They're going to play in Detroit tomorrow. And Steph Curry is questionable. Iguodala out. So this is the first big domino on the slate. Steph Curry averages, how about this, 33.3 minutes per game on the season. Do you think that's intentional? He is the king of the threes. And 37 points last night, or last game against Brooklyn. Man, he really got it done on that slate. If he's out, then of course we have to look at Jordan Poole and Gary Payton II, the mitten. Those are the 2 guys I'm really most interested tonight for Golden State, assuming Steph is out. Poole, threes were not wild for him in that Brooklyn game. 0 for 7 on threes. Inside the arc, he was 6 for 6. So if he can just hit some of those long balls, I think he'll get more shots. He took 13. I think he'll get closer to 20 shots if Steph is out. And we know that he can work that 2-man game with Draymond in Steph's absence. And then Peyton really getting it done here in his minutes, a little bit of everything defensively. He can push it, score in transition. Only 3,900 on DraftKings. I really like that price. Other than that, Wiggins is in play for me in that mid 6K range. I think he'll get a little bump in usage. And of course, his minutes were down against Brooklyn just because turned into a blowout. And then on the bench, one of these guys could easily step up without Iguodala. Damian Lee, Porter, Kuminga, they could push for 20-plus minutes. GPP options there. I don't think you need to go there in cash with Poole and Peyton. On the Cleveland side, they are coming off a back-to-back. They lost in Brooklyn last night, and they continue to have some major health issues. Mobley and Sexton are out. Then we've got Jarrett Allen questionable, and then we're still going to mark Markkanen and Stevens as questionable. So with all of those guys out last night, you had that starting 5 of Rubio, Garland, Okoro, Dean Wade, and Ed Davis. And Rubio and Garland are, they were solid last night, but in the mid 6K range, almost 7K range on this slate against Golden State's number 1 defense. I'm not looking to go there. Not going to play Okoro. Dean Wade, he played 38 minutes, 4,200 on DraftKings. He's probably the starter I would like the most, but he could be dealing with some Draymond in his grill all night, so probably won't go there. Ed Davis was serviceable. with that spot start last night. 24 minutes, 6 and 11, mid 3K range. He is a value option if he's starting again and all those other bigs are out. Not an easy matchup with Looney while he's out there. So there's actually a center in the next game I like a little bit better. And not going to go to that bench with Osman, Love, Valentine, and Windler. That's a pass for me. All right, game 2, the other 7:30 tip. By the way, we have 2 games at 7:30, 2 at 8, and 2 at 9. Tidy little 6-game slate. This second game is Washington in Miami. Another one of the low totals, 209.5. Miami favored by 7 at home. And we've got 2 top 10 defenses here and 2 of the bottom 6 in pace. That's why we've got the low total. We also have both teams on the second night of a back-to-back. However, we could have a little opportunity, especially on the Washington side, because Dinwiddie is doubtful. Nobody is expecting him to play. I just haven't seen it that he's officially out on the second night of a back-to-back. But if he is, there's a little more interest here in Holiday and Neto as the value guards. The last time Dinwiddie was out, they basically split the game. Holiday starting, Neto off the bench. Neto was a little bit more productive, and he's a little bit cheaper on both sites. So I do lean towards him slightly. Not a must play. You don't have to go here, though, as a value option because you've got the tough Miami defense. Lowry is going to be back. He rested last night. And then Beal obviously is more intriguing without Dinwiddie, but you've got Butler ready to defend him. So those guys are playable for me, those 3, and that's the primary place I would look here for Washington. You could also look at Gafford. He's been splitting the games with Montrezl Harrell, but they're both able to get it done with that rotation. I mean, look at last night. Gafford, 20 points, 9 rebounds. Montrez, 15 and 9. But Montrez is a lot more expensive on both sites here. So as much as I love him in his game, not going to go there. The only big I would look at tonight because of their prices is Gafford. With Miami, we've got Bam questionable. Markieff Morris still questionable. And then, like I mentioned, we have Lowry back in the lineup. So I think Hero goes to the bench, and we're likely looking at Lowry, Robinson, Butler, Tucker, and Dedmon. So if Bam is out here, Dedmon is certainly a value play to look at. 3,700 on FanDuel. I like that price. Tucker's been playing well. 4K range, always a little bit scary. So you don't need to go there with these other value plays we've got. And then Butler really stepped up last night. Big triple-double against New Orleans. He's pricey. You could go there. There are a couple other pay-up guys we really need to look at here. And with Butler and Lowry and Hero on the mix, a little bit less attractive for me on Butler. With the Miami bench, Hero now back there likely over 7K. Probably won't go there. Caleb Martin, again, quietly somebody you want to keep an eye on. He's got that 8X potential. Hit it last night. Strus heating it up a little bit with his shot. But in general, this is not a stack game for me. Really more likely a value play, one of the Washington guards or possibly Dwayne Dedmon. All right, game 3. We move to 8 o'clock Eastern. The Clippers and the Grizzlies. Now we're starting to get some totals we like. 220.5. Clippers favored by 1. And these are 2 of those top 4 teams in pace I was talking about. Clippers number 2 on the season. Grizzlies number 4. We also like the Grizzlies have struggled defensively here. They're 29th. Now, this is a front end for the Clippers. And big news there. We've got out already Winslow, Ibaka, and Morris. And then Batum is doubtful. So looking like a potentially tighter rotation for the Clippers. We did see that a little bit in that last game because Terrence Mann was out. He's also questionable tonight. So with his absence, we saw some extra minutes for Amir Coffey and Brandon Boston Jr. Boston Jr. more of a target here for me if you need to go there in the 3K range. He had 13 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist in 20 minutes. He had a funny quote, something along the lines of, I don't even know what I'm going to do offensively, so the opponent can't know. So if Man is out, he could hit value again. But I am looking primarily at one of these guards for the Clippers, Reggie Jackson and Bledsoe. Reggie, probably my preferred option here. Mid 6K range on both sites, and he's just jacking. Keep talking about it. Last 4 games, he's averaged 11 3-point attempts. So, he's shooting 33% on the season. I like his matchup a little bit better than Paul George because Dillon Brooks is starting again for the Grizzlies. And so I think he'll do some work on Paul George, who's been excellent here, hitting those 50 fantasy point marks. But on this slate, he's not my favorite pay-up option. On the Grizzlies side, here's the opportunity we always wait for if you're thinking about playing a Grizzly. You don't want to play him in back-to-backs, and you don't want to play him in blowouts either. We saw that in the last game against Houston. Blowout win, the maximum minutes for anyone on the team was only 25 minutes. This is an island game, though, for him, and projected to be a tighter game. So this is the time, in my mind, to really look at Ja, right at 10,000 on both sites. Right now, I'm leaning to him over Paul George if you pay up in this game. Dillon Brooks is also an option for me, right around 6,000. He's had 3 games back, so he's getting into the groove. And that's the way I think you get a little bit of exposure to this higher total. Steven Adams, 4,600 on DraftKings. I like his matchup. He could get it done. We saw him smash in that revenge game against New Orleans. And then don't think I'm going to hit that Grizzlies bench. All right, halfway through the slate here. Really getting after it today. Big Thursday, by the way, in addition to this 6-game NBA DFS slate. We've got the showdown game tonight in the NFL, New England and Carolina. Make sure you, New England and Atlanta, make sure you check out that podcast that Omaha Joe and I did last night. Get ready for that. And then we'll have all the lineups for the members tonight. DFSCoachTalk.com. Grab a 5-day pass, and you'll be with us through Monday night. So you'll get all of our NBA and NFL all weekend. You'll get our PGA weekend lineups tomorrow night. Sign up at the website, and then we'll invite you into our Discord with an email. And it's going to be a fun schedule tonight. We'll have our NBA lineups coming out at about 7:05 and our NFL lineups coming out at about 7:45, right after the NBA lock. Any questions, you can reach out to us on Twitter at DFS Coach Talk. All right, second half of the slate here. The other 8 o'clock game, Spurs and Timberwolves, and this is the other juicy total, 221. Minnesota favored at home by 2.5. They have that slight edge this year over the Spurs. They're 5-9. Spurs only 4-10. Now, we always like to avoid the Spurs, but this is also an opportunity to look at them. Unique that we've got some interest in the Spurs and the Grizzlies on the same slate. But the Spurs, they played on Tuesday. This is Thursday. They don't play again until Monday. So weird scheduling quirk for them. Pirtle's still out. And this is a stackable game to me, or a mini stack. So on the Spurs side, Eubanks definitely in play with Pirtle out. And then DeJounte Murray, we just cannot ignore him. Flirting with triple doubles lately, really playing great ball. Expensive though. He's right in that jaw price range, almost 10,000 on both sites. After that, more of a GPP look for me on that San Antonio side. And I'd rather get a little bit more exposure from Minnesota, actually. They've got that 1-2-3 combo on the perimeter that was really strong last night. Pat Beverly, D'Angelo, and Edwards. They had that 10-point win against the Kings last night, and it was Pat Beverly's best game of the season, which is pretty impressive because he was 0 for 5 on three-pointers, but he had 38.5 DraftKings points. Very cheap option. By the way, I do think he'll give Murray a bit of a hard time. So you may want to be cautious with Murray because of that. But with it being a back-to-back and Beverly playing 34 minutes last night, I think he'll probably dip a little bit there. Still playable. And then D'Angelo and Edwards, they both played in that 30-minute range. Much more affordable than Cat here. And Cat, in his 37 minutes last night, only took 12 shots. Now, that's a bit of an aberration. I think he'll probably get a few more shots tonight. But he's really expensive here, so I'd rather go with one of those perimeter guys if you want to stack a couple guys in this game. Edwards finished strong with his scoring last night. He got up 24 shots. And then D'Angelo had a solid line across the board. With the bench here, no real interest. Okogie's questionable, so he could shift the minutes a little bit if he gets back in there. This is one of those games where I could see Vanderbilt or Jade McDaniels being a surprise value hit at a cheap price, but they're GPP only for me. So I'd rather look at those 5 starters I mentioned, 2 on the Spurs, 3 on Minnesota. All right, next game. Let's move to 9 o'clock Eastern. Let's go to Denver as Philly is coming to town to play the Nuggets on NBA TV. 209 total here. Denver favored by 7.5. Front end for Denver. Island game for Philly, coming off that brutal 35-point loss to Utah with those key guys still out, Embiid, Danny Green, and Thibault. So Philly just struggling here on the road without those key guys. So tough spot for them here, going up against Denver in that 4th-ranked defense. Looking at a starting lineup here of Maxey, Curry, Tobias Harris, Drummond, and then if they use the same 5 as last game, it'll be Shake Milton, who really was the best value for Philly. He got 35 minutes, 18, 3, and 4, 5K range on both sites. So he's probably the guy I would look to the most if he starts again. Unfortunately, we may not have that news before lock. Maxey, a little bit expensive again on this slate in the 7K range. Curry had an off night and probably won't make the roster for me again here, or he won't make it here. I did have some exposure to him on the last slate, unfortunately, in that Curry brothers lineup I went with. Tobias, 7,500 on FanDuel. That's the other guy I think you can really look at here. If he can fit in, I do like that price. I'm not going to go to Drummond. Just disappeared against Rudy Gobert in that last one, only playing 12 minutes. And then on the bench, Korkmaz and Niang did get their opportunities. Korkmaz 34 minutes, but only 2 of 12 from the field, 0 of 6 on threes. If he hits those shots, he can pay off 4,400 on DraftKings. And Niang got 30 minutes in that return to Utah. Didn't get many shots, though. 3,900 GPP option on DraftKings. On the Denver side, we have the big news of Will Barton being doubtful. I'm recording this just before lunchtime on Thursday, so that's the latest news I have there. Zeke Naji out, which is unfortunate. I like Zeke, and he's been doing some things. But here's the thing about Denver here. As we're on Game 5 on the slate, we've been talking about some value centers throughout the show, and now all of a sudden we get to Denver and Jokic. So on DraftKings, I like him here at 12,000. Did you know he's averaging 58 DraftKings points per game? So right about 5x at that price. And he's been even better than that in the last few, pushing for 70 fantasy points a night. So he's definitely in play for me there. On FanDuel at 11.6, the problem is with only one center that you can play, and he's only center eligible, some of these other value plays we've talked about, like Dedmon, possibly Gafford, you can't go with both of them. And so this is really a prime example of a night when you might want to put out 2 lineups, one with Jokic on FanDuel and one without. He's just such a massive part of that offense without all those typical starters with Jamal and Porter Jr. And if Barton's out again, the offense goes through Jokic. So I will probably have him in one of our lineups. After that, though, with these other starters, not a lot of interest. Gordon had a good game recently, and Coach had him out there, which was good. Um, but Rivers is just putting out duds left and right, and nothing special from Morris or Jeff Green. So the next guy I would look at is actually our man Bones Highland. Omaha Joe is all over him, and he got dinged up in the last game, only played 11 minutes with an ankle issue. But before that, 2 straight games over 30 fantasy points. So at 3,400 on DraftKings, I might take a look there and put him on the clipboard. PJ Dozier, mid 3K range on both sites. He's also in play for me. All right, one game to go here. It's Toronto and Utah. The other 9 o'clock game. This is the one total between 210 and 220. It's 214.5. Utah favored by 9.5. This is the only game on the slate where both teams are top 12 in pace and top 10 in offensive efficiency. So wouldn't mind a little bit of exposure here. It is a front end for Toronto. They're going to play in Sacramento tomorrow. And some key question marks there. OG Anunoby, questionable with the hip. Precious Achua, questionable with the shoulder. And Boucher, questionable with the back. Now, in the last game for Toronto, they had one of their classic box scores where all the starters played between 39 and 41 minutes. Thank you, Nick Nurse. And all the starters had between 13 and 19 field goal attempts, I believe is the note I have here. So we love that. We love the minutes. But is anybody going to jump out and snare a couple extra shots and get it done? Because they're pretty pricey across the board. Van Vliet, mid 8K. Siakam, right around 8,000. OG, almost 8,000. Barnes, almost 7,000. Trent, 7,000 on FanDuel. I really don't love any of those prices against Utah's 7th-ranked defense. If OG Anunoby is out, maybe a little more interest in Siakam. But Van Vliet's got a pretty tough matchup with Conley. So as much as I like the solid feel here from Toronto, just given those price tags, I'm not fired up to play anybody. If OG is out, then we might get a value play in Khem Birch, who's the only guy who came off the bench and had more than 10 minutes in the last game. He had 21, and he's minimum price on DraftKings at 3,000. Oh, by the way, Chris Boucher is 3,000 on DraftKings, which is just absurd because we know if that guy gets over 20 minutes, he can get 30 fantasy points pretty easily. But very inconsistent with minutes and production. So probably won't go there with he's got the question mark, and we've got Khem Birch involved. So we'll have to just wait and see on the injury report there, and not enough minutes for me for Svi or Banton. All right, how about Utah here? Last team to break down on the slate. The only injury news here is that Rudy Gay is probable to make his debut. So that could foul up the bench a little bit, enough for me that I won't go to any of those bigs, so to speak, with Eric Paschall and Hassan Whiteside. It's one of the nights where if I go with Utah, it's probably going to be one of these guards. Conley's a real nice price, 5,700 on FanDuel. Donovan Mitchell under 9K, which is nice. And you can't just look at that last game because their minutes were down in that blowout. So this could be a bounce back spot for Mitchell in terms of his minutes to get him close to that 50 fantasy point mark. Probably won't go anywhere else on Utah with those middle prices. But Clarkson off the bench, 5K range, certainly in play. All right, that's it. 6 games. Really looking forward to it. Again, it tips at 7:30. if you want to join us today, get in before 6 o'clock Eastern, if you don't mind, so we can get you into Discord and then make sure we have the lineups ready to post. Any questions, DFS Coach Talk on Twitter. Make sure to tune in to the NBA podcast tomorrow. It'll continue 7 days a week as Coach will be back in the studio. And then, of course, we'll have our NFL main slate and primetime podcast posting over the weekend. So check those out for a big Week 11 in the NFL. All right, that'll do it. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me for this, hopefully, 1 week early feast on this Thursday. I am Andrew Hanson. On behalf of the entire DFS Coach Talk team, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.